Drake Maye about to be named the starter for the New England Patriots, outplayed Jacoby Brissett, and a whole lot more news from the final week of preseason as we get ready for regular season NFL football in today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making this your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Appreciate our everydayers out there. And make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube notification as well, or wherever you are listening to this podcast. Subscribe up so you don't miss an episode all season long, 5 days a week of P&W, which is brought to you today by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. Before we get going with the football news and the on-field stuff and all the roster stuff going on in the NFL, is a really sad story that just came out that you relayed to me that, this is a huge story for the Baltimore Ravens. Their offensive line coach has passed away at the age of 70, has been in the hospital dealing with something for a couple of weeks now. And I mean, this has not only an effect emotionally on a team, you lose a coach right before a season starts, but an offensive line coach is an important position in your organization, man.
Huge. So unfortunately, I have a little bit of experience with this in that, not that I was on the Steelers payroll, but I was there at camp. In 2019, they lost Daryl Drake, their wide receivers coach. He was 62, and that was a sudden one. They just canceled practice and didn't have a backup plan, and horrible. I mean, just a terrible feeling over the whole organization, over the whole campus. And when I was at Pitt, we lost a really fun young man, 19-year-old Billy Gaines was a wide receiver. He was first or second year at Pitt, and he passed away. And I don't know if people remember, but in training camp several years ago, during his end of his tenure in Philadelphia, Andy Reid lost a son in training camp. And this stuff is horrible for the families, the people that know him, of course, but it stays with the team all year long. That's not a usual bumps and bruises. This guy blew out his knee, or man, our quarterback's not playing well enough. I mean, this is real life stuff. And not to make light of it, but my biggest concern on the field for the Ravens is their rebuilt, revamped offensive line. And I've said this from the beginning. Was a well-respected offensive line coach, that if I was the owner of a team, I would hire a head guy, and then I'd hire an O-line coach, and then we'll go from there. I mean, I think it's as important as any guy that's not the head coach or offensive play caller. And now you got to be scrambling. I mean, you got competition at right tackle, at right guard, another new guard. Can Stanley stay healthy at left tackle? I mean, so that position is really a concern for me.
Yeah. And obviously more important than anything on the field is the Ravens family, the Joe D'Alessandris family, died at the age of 70 with what is being called an acute illness. So obviously our thoughts go out there to the Ravens organization, the D'Alessandris family.
And he's been in the hospital for several weeks. It wasn't as sudden as some of these others that I mentioned, but still, I mean, that doesn't make light of it at all, of course.
No, not at all. Unfortunate news there out of Baltimore. This is interesting. So Drake Maye, according to his own head coach, has, quote, outplayed the veteran Jacoby Brissett, Matt. But Drake Maye has still not been named the starter for the New England Patriots. Can you explain to me how it would be possible for your number 3 overall pick rookie quarterback to outplay the veteran stopgap and not be the starter?
Yeah, and maybe there's just another shoe to drop. I mean, I assume it was this just came out. This is the latest news that I've seen. So I assume it was just a Monday head coach press conference, and he said those words, that he's been the better player. But then he went on to say something along the lines of, but we still need to keep into account every step of the way, what they were like in OTAs and all that stuff. But that seems like ancient history to me now. And I would hope the veteran quarterback's more accomplished in OTAs and minicamp than the guy got drafted a month ago.
You mean the rookie got better after he practiced more and learned?
Right. Isn't that what we're here for? What would you do though? I mean, let's say May had the better preseason. He's obviously way more talented. You're way more excited about him. But Brissett is what he is, and he's been around the block, and he's been in NFL stadiums and all those things. And then the reason I ask is I think Brissett would be a tremendous, and everyone talks about how tough and smart he is and like the perfect backup, low starter, high-end backup type. And I think he'd accept it fine. He wouldn't give you any problems. And obviously we're not in the building. But the status of that offense and the team as a whole, I mean, they might get the first pick in the draft. I just worry you could do damage to May.
It's the only argument that's acceptable, but I mean, how bad of a failure is that your team's not even good enough for you to stand your quarterback behind an offensive line? I don't think they believe that about their own team. And so if you think he can't protect himself, then maybe you don't put him out there, but then you're going to sit him all year, even though he's more ready.
When's it going to get better?
Right. So to me, it's done. If anything, I think it's probably that Mayo had the question in front of him with the reporters and answered it honestly, but he hadn't told the players yet. So he has to go in, talk to Brissett about it, talk to May about it, and be like, hey, look, Jacoby, the young guy beat you out. He's our starting quarterback. Then you officially make the announcement that the one guy is the starter. Maybe that's the reason, probably. But it doesn't really make sense on any planet to me that you don't start the number 3 pick in the draft that just beat out the veteran in preseason.
This is a kind of weird time of year to know what days each team is practicing and who's in the building and who isn't. So my hunch is you're 100% right without digging into it too deep, because this just came out that he probably had a press conference. Players aren't even in the building till tomorrow. Tells the whole team tomorrow, and then it gets announced at 4 p.m. tomorrow or whatever that May's our starting quarterback. I would imagine we know that in the next 48 hours.
Yeah, I totally agree there.
It's encouraging.
One thing you don't want to do, like I understand if he's not ready and you don't want to force him out there. Mm-hmm. And one thing you don't want to do with a rookie quarterback is start him and then bench him and like do that thing. So you want to be sure. But if he's already playing better and has outplayed the guy, then go let him take his lumps. Even if it's bad, you let him play through it and you develop the guy.
I mean, I can't believe there'd be as much on his plate in terms of audibles and setting protections and things like that as Brissett, of course. But I hope you thought about this the day before you drafted him. I mean, like this stuff has to be, this just didn't spring upon you. When you decided to draft him, you put a plan in place, or at least good organizations do, of, well, this is what we can handle him. Well, did he pass this test? Blah, blah, blah. Like I remember Russell Wilson's rookie year. They had just signed Flynn from the Packers. And Pete Carroll every week would say something like, we put more on Wilson's plate and he handled it no problem. Next year, we're going to put another on there and put another on there. Didn't see it coming. And maybe that's where May's at, and I bring it up with him just a little more so than some of the others, because I really liked him coming out of North Carolina. He was my number 2. But my concern is he could be the going to do too much kind of guy. You know what I mean? And if he does that here, it could get real ugly real quick with no one helping him.
Got to play him. Got to play him.
Yeah, I think so.
Drake Maye. I'm gonna actually say it. Drake Maye, your starting quarterback for the New England Patriots.
Do we have 32 in place now? I think the only one that hasn't been announced is my Steelers, but it's Russell Wilson, folks.
I think. Oh, yeah, that's and that was the sham of a. And Justin Fields didn't play so great in the preseason that it would be like, okay, this was kind of a sham competition. But actually it became a real competition because of how awesome Justin Fields was. He didn't do that. So it's Russell Wilson, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Coach Tomlin just has not said those words, but since the beginning, he said Wilson's in pole position. If you go to one practice, you'll be like, oh, that's a starting quarterback. I mean, just how they handle it,
Yep. All right. There we go. 32 starters. I think we've got them all now as we head into the 2024 season, and we head into the next segment. What about one guy who's not going to be starting quarterback? Who knows, maybe ever. Trey Lance throwing 5 picks in his preseason game. I did watch all of that, unfortunately for me, in my time this weekend. And we have a young wide receiver potentially available in trade, Matt. We'll get into all of that and the rest of our preseason and roster notes around the NFL next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and, which is always great, for free. And LinkedIn isn't a regular old job board. There's professionals on LinkedIn that are not actively looking for a job, but they might be ready for your role if it's the right role for them, even though they aren't on another job site. In fact, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. And 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours at LinkedIn. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats. That's why there's tons of resources to help you save time when you're trying to hire, even write your job postings for you. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. John Metchie, according to reports now, might be available for trade from the Houston Texans. And you might say, yeah, John Metchie was drafted a couple years ago and hasn't done anything in the NFL and, had an illness. I mean, he had leukemia, right? That he had to come back from as a rookie and then into his second year. So now into year 3, hasn't done anything. Of course, he might be available, even though he's a former second-round pick. This from Jordan Schultz, that multiple teams have reached out to the Texans to see if John Metchie would be available in trade due to a plethora of receivers on their roster. It's unclear if Houston would move him, but several teams are keeping a close eye. And if you haven't watched a lot of Houston Texans preseason football, or you haven't watched a lot of preseason football at all, that's okay, because I don't blame you for it, especially not watching your own team. But I did watch John Metchie play some preseason football, and Matt, he looked good. And I think that's where this comes from, is teams watch him and say, there we go. There's the John Metchie we thought he might look like in the NFL. Just unfortunate circumstances for him, happened a little late, and now there's guys on top of him on the roster.
So as you can imagine, on our Steelers show, we have picked up and looked under every rock in the NFL for wide receivers. And this is a name that we've mentioned really for over a month. And that was before the preseason. He's had a really good preseason. I liked him quite a bit coming out of Alabama, kind of profiled him as a projectable, strong number 2 as a draft prospect. And we know some things got derailed early in his career, unfortunately. And of course, everyone knows they have Diggs and Dell and Nico, and those guys are big-time players. But they also have Noah Brown. There's also a chance you could get Robert Woods for next to nothing off them as well, because I don't think Woods or Metchie play special teams. And if you're the 4th or 5th wide receiver on a team, you got to play special teams. So I think there's a lot of these type of deals. I think there'll be a lot of like Robert Woods type of deals out there. Here's a 7th for Woods that you're going to cut. Like Darius Slayton's a name I've brought up for the Steelers a couple times on the air. Like, better than what they got, but not perfect. But Metchie's pretty appealing. I don't know what it would cost to get him, but I'd be interested.
Yep. I don't think it would cost a lot.
No.
And maybe that's why the Texans don't trade him if they can find a spot on the roster. They're like, well, actually, he's finally turned out for us and we drafted and developed him. Let's keep him rather than getting a 6th round pick for him or whatever a team might be offering. So that would be interesting. I would like it for Metchie if he was traded, to give him a little opportunity maybe in a new place that there's more opportunity for him to continue his NFL career.
He's really blocked at the moment, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although Diggs could be a one and done, but then Metchie's in his last year of his contract already.
Right. Yeah. This is the time where we're going to see a number of that. We're 24 hours away from cut down day, and we're seeing a few trickled in veterans that are getting cut, and guys that are like, okay, let's see if you can catch on real quick in the next 24 hours on another roster, kind of doing them a solid with the early cuts, and then we'll get all the cuts on Tuesday when rosters have to be set, and we'll see some minor trades, I think, around the league as well, as teams try to,
I think there could be a lot,
something for the guys they're going to cut anyway, or they have too many or too few at certain position groups. So this is going to be an interesting 24 hours, and of course, we'll have it all covered for you when all the cuts do happen and trades do happen in the next day or so.
So you're already seeing some teams. Here's our first wave of cuts: 10 guys that really had no chance. I mean, those are the names you're hearing now. Like a a Robert Woods is going to be wait till the last minute to see if we can get a 6th or 7th round pick for him. But the no-brainers, they're being cut already. And I think Cincinnati let go of several over the weekend already. Like they played an early game and next day they got rid of 10 dudes or whatever. And got to think of it this way too. Like that O-line coach probably is only going to coach 9 guys. You know, I mean, they're going to make the final roster. And over the course of the year, maybe 12 different human beings walk in your room. Well, right now there's like 18 of them in here. Like,
right.
And you're all working hard, but get out of here. I'm not have time for you anymore, you know?
And there's the players that are maybe young players who numbers game, they're not going to fit on your roster, but you think, man, we don't want to lose this guy because if we waive him, he might get claimed and it's not worth it. So maybe we'll cut a veteran instead and bring him back in week 2 or something like that. So we can stash this guy or throw somebody on IR. So there's going to be some roster maneuvering and really some gymnastics, I think, with some of these rosters around the NFL, which is always a lot of fun if you're someone who's got a sickness and likes to watch every team's 53rd man, as we do, man.
Yeah. And a couple things on the note is it's happened many times where you get the call, you've made the team, you don't realize you're number 53, but you were sweating it out if you're going to make it or not. And then a day later, they trade for somebody at your position and you're cut. You know, like that happens. Don't celebrate quite yet. You know, like being that 53rd guy is a tenuous job.
And a lot of times there's a player that a team likes that is a veteran, but kind of like one of those like didn't sign on day 1 of free agency, signed in the summer, but he's a veteran player that you know his name and deserves to make a roster spot. But those veteran players, their contracts for the year become guaranteed if they make the opening day roster. So some teams cut veteran players and say, hey, I know we cut you, but we're going to bring you back in week 2 because we just didn't want to have the guaranteed money because, you know, you might be somebody who gets shuttled back and forth or ends up on the practice squad or something like that. And so you might see some surprising cuts, semi-surprising cuts that are players that the team wants to bring back, but they're veteran players and they just don't want to have that contract guaranteed for the year.
No, that makes a ton of sense. And another thing we're already seeing is reports of Joe Blow's going to start on the PUP list too. You know, like Conklin from the Browns just came off. Chubb with the Browns is going on. It sounds like Chubb in Miami's going on. Sounds like Odell's going on. So there's going to be a lot of that kind of stuff where you're getting reports. Expect Joe Blow to start the season on the PUP list.
Here's another one that's interesting for the 49ers. So they might be down a wide receiver if Brandon Ayuk continues his hold out situation. But he's holding in, so he's part of the roster right now. So he has to make the team. But Trent Williams is holding out. So he's on the reserve, did not report list. So if they sign Trent Williams, it's not going to be until after Tuesday because they have an extra roster spot right now to work with him. They don't have an extra wide receiver spot for Brandon Ayuk because he's currently on the 53-man roster, has to make the 53-man roster. So there's those things to think about. By the way, the latest reports are both Brandon Ayuk and Trent Williams willing to sit out games. Of course, you have to say that for your posturing situation. Are they willing to lose game checks? I feel like Trent Williams might actually be more so than Brandon Ayuk, but we'll find out with those situations. And who knows, maybe a big Ayuk trade still to come. There's been some rumblings that Washington might be back in on this thing too. If the Steelers, at some point, the Steelers and Commanders or whoever, especially the Steelers, it's like they would be like, yeah, you know what? Never mind. Our offers, we have to start the season with our guys. You know, at some point, like, we're not going to do this.
Don't call another team. Yeah.
Our offer's not out there anymore. Let's go call it out.
Right. I can't wait forever. So that's a great example, actually, though, of what we were saying before. If you're the Niners' 53rd guy, you're just like, well, the best left tackle in the league is going to sign any minute now.
He's going to sign Wednesday, and I'm gone again. Yeah.
Right. This is my stint in the NFL might not be very lengthy, you know.
Well, the other thing you can do is, if I'm not mistaken, don't you have to, if you're on IR before the season, before the 53 cut down, you're gone for the year, but you're
gone for the year. So if someone puts you on IR in camp, right.
So you can create spots that way as well by doing different roster designations after the 53 is set and earn some more roster spots back.
So, but it also screws you up. Like hypothetical, Nick Chubb, they want to put him on IR, not PUP. Well, he has to make the 53rd, then put him on IR so that he can be designated to come off. I mean, if they put him on last week, he's done for the year. He can't ever come off. So that means you got to cut some other running back likely for a day or whatever and hope you get that guy back.
One player that might be on short-term IR, rookie defensive lineman, might not be able to start the season due to injury. Some other injuries, some other camp notes as well. And we'll get a little deeper into this Trey Lance debacle from the preseason, which might close the book on him. Next.
Ooh.
Today's episode of Locked On Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. I mean, you've heard us talk so much about FanDuel here on the podcast, and there's a reason they're America's #1 sportsbook. And a little something different for you football fans out there, a special offer now through September 22nd. All FanDuel customers can bet just $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. By the way, I love YouTube TV. I use YouTube TV. Then if you have a YouTube TV base plan as I do, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook and bet a ton of it. Week 1, week 2, there's tons of weekly lines and bets to make at FanDuel on the NFL season. Who's going to win the next Super Bowl? Who's going to win offensive or defensive rookie of the year? So many prop bets, over under win totals, which Matt and I are going to talk about on a future episode before the season gets started here. So much more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. So we just mentioned the IR thing. And so a player that might go on IR, unfortunate for the Arizona Cardinals, who are already light on pass rushers on the defensive side of the ball. This from Ian Rappaport. First round rookie defensive lineman Darius Robinson suffered a calf injury that is considered a multi-week injury after scans, and possible he could begin the season on injured reserves. If so, earliest he could return would be week 5. So there you go.
And real quick on that, I mean, like, they have 2 high draft picks on a defensive line that I think is really bad to begin with. Robinson a first, and then Ojulari was a second last year. So both those guys are out. So, I mean, that defense is, I think, the least talented in the league right now.
Which is why Kyler Murray, a rookie wide receiver, might be even more valuable in your fantasy leagues if they're throwing from behind all day.
I am scooping up Cardinals left and right. I mean, they're my shootout team of the year. Just bombs away, Connor, McBride, all those guys.
Trey Benson, the rookie running back, I was hoping for more. He was going to be a guy I was really targeting in all my fantasy leagues, but I didn't like what I saw as much in the preseason games on the field.
100% agree. I'm in a bunch of dynasty leagues. I own them in 2. I just kind of threw him out there on the trade block. Like, let's see what kind of flies this gathers. A little bit. I always thought he was a little bit straight line-ish to begin with, but I don't think he had a very good preseason.
And you never want to overrate, a preseason game or just a small sample of games. They haven't had most, even guys like that are rookies that have played a lot in the preseason haven't had a full season or full games worth even of, production of it to see what you really know about a player. But with running backs, especially early returns, you can tell who's natural at the position. Linebackers are similar to that, especially from a run defense standpoint. You can tell which guys are natural and which guys aren't at those sort of instinctive type of positions. And it is, I didn't
pass the test yet.
Yeah. And he was a guy before the preseason started to be like, oh, this is the pick, right? I love this for a rookie who's currently a backup that one injury away from being a league winner for you. We'll see. He could still be that, but more doubts now than I had before.
100%. Size, speed guy,
One player who got a ton of work that he needed is Dallas Cowboys' third-string quarterback, Trey Lance. And, I mean, 323 passing yards in week 3 of the preseason, 90 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. But to bury the lead, 5 interceptions from Trey Lance. And there was he was looking fast out there. He made some nice plays. But the big knock on him has been that he hasn't let it rip throughout his career. So he went out there and said, you know what? I'm going to let it rip in this game. Threw for 323 yards, got a ton of work, but he also threw it to the other team 5 times. And maybe, there was one ball that was kind of wrestled away. He could have placed it in a better spot, but like 4 out of 5 even, we're on him.
Right.
And like at some point, I guess you just kind of close the book on a former number 3 overall pick as being like, this guy could potentially be a starter sometime for some team down the road.
So you know better than me. I mean, I did see the graphic. I think he threw 1 interception in college, his final year or whatever, too. Like
he had the immaculate college season in 2019.
Yeah.
It was his freshman year, redshirt freshman year. He went undefeated, won the D2 or 1A, 1AA, whatever it is, FCS, whatever they call it, at North Dakota State national championship. He threw 0 interceptions.
Zero.
I mean, nobody's ever had the immaculate season. Undefeated, 0 interceptions. You go win the national championship. And then he played that one kind of semi-real kind of COVID game the next season, and he did throw 1 interception in that game. And that was those are the only, he played 1 season plus 1 game in his college career and 1 interception in that time.
So as you know better than I do, I mean, not exactly renowned though as a great reader of defenses, super quick microprocessor, Dak Prescott, Drew Brees type guy. But I also, not to defend him, but I do know this happens, that he did let it rip in this game. He threw 5 picks, which is terrible anyway you cut it. There's just no way around it. But I wonder if his coach told him, or the head coach said, Trey, this doesn't really matter. This is your last chance. If you're not sure if you should let it go or not, let it go. Every time out there, just rip it, grip it and rip it all day long. And if it doesn't go great, I'm not going to hold it against you. I just want to see that version of you.
That, yeah, I mean, I think there's probably a lot to that, and maybe a little bit better in practice to kind of just throw those picks. And we've seen a lot of quarterbacks throw a lot of picks in practice and letting guys make plays and just letting it go. And unfortunately, and this is the last time we get a chance to see him for another year, probably. Unless there's disastrous injury luck for the Dallas Cowboys. And so at this point, starting to get a long way since 2021 draft. And even though he's either 1 day older or 1 day younger than Michael Penix, which is insane.
Wow, that is insane.
That's a young guy still, because he was so young coming into the draft. But you hate to close the book on a guy that young when there's still rookie quarterbacks that haven't done anything yet, that are the same age. But the way teams look at him right now is probably, well, there goes that one.
Yeah, I mean, guys like Justin Fields could be not that far behind. I mean, the league tells you a lot with compensation and trades, and people didn't give up first-round picks to get them. It's not Brandon Cooks getting traded for a first-round pick and then next year getting traded for a first-round pick because people want them. I mean, it's we'll take them and roll the dice. And contrary to what I said, if you're the Vikings and you're interested in maybe bringing Trey Lance in, I'm just throwing out a name. Well, you're going to watch that game and be like, probably not.
This is the dance that a lot of teams have, whether it's those players that are, trying to make the roster here and you're 24 hours out. You might call a team, say, hey, you're going to cut this guy. Interesting. Like a lot of teams might be like, well, do we send a 7th or do we just let him get cut and then maybe take a shot and pick him up? Then it's nothing, and then we can just cut him the next day if we need to. So there's a lot of that going on in the league. A lot of waiting and be like, kind of swirling around this player. I don't want to give anything up of value, but if you cut him, maybe I would bring that guy in. Maybe I would even just put him on the practice squad. Maybe I would do something here, but I'm not going to spend any resources on it.
And you can still talk to the agent, like, hey, if he gets cut, we want to be your first call. But my favorite thing is when you get traded for like a future 7th. Like that's the lowest thing you can receive for any player. We'll give you a 2027 7th.
Next year's 7th.
Yeah.
And if you go by the
or they swap 7ths, that's even worse.
Swapping 7th, little pick swap of future picks, and that is because most people think that next year's pick is worth 1 round fewer than this year's pick, right? So during the draft last year, if someone traded you a 2nd or a 3rd,
especially like in the mid rounds, a
2nd next year is worth a 3rd this year, kind of thing. And so if it's a 7th, well, there's no round after that. So you're saying your 7th is worth nothing.
It's a penny.
Yeah,
right.
It's as low as we get. You pick it up and you go, oh, hey, your penny, here you go. I'll trade you this.
But then you got to make a roster spot for the guy, though.
Unfortunate for Trey Lance. I think there's a certain part of him that got ruined, and maybe a bad decision. And if I was advising a young quarterback, I would say start multiple seasons in college football. And, I would take Trey Lance as my prime example. Say, look at Michael Penix. He was in college for 6 years or whatever it was. 5 years. Started a million games. He's played 1 preseason game in his career. Sky's the limit for him. Same exact age. Trey Lance played 1 year, then had the COVID year, came out too early, had to sit, got 1 injury. And it's like, go transfer. Trey Lance could have gone anywhere. Transfer to Alabama. And where would his
right. Everybody would take him.
Right.
So I think, and Cooper Rush is the 2 there too, right?
Yeah, as far as I know.
Yeah, right. I don't think there's any reason that changed.
I love that the Cowboys played Trey Lance more than any player in preseason. That's what he needed. To just like let him play. It's unfortunate that it ended in the 5. Because if you take those 5 plays out, I think we'd be talking about Trey Lance.
343 yards.
Hey, he was looking faster than he looked as a 49er. He might have lost a couple pounds actually since he was a Niner. He was looking faster. He was making plays, and he still got all the athletes. 6'4", 225 with a good arm and athleticism. That
didn't change.
That's something you would want to mold into. And so I don't know what his work ethic is like off the field. Maybe there's some stuff there. Look, we're probably spending too much time talking about a guy who's not going to make an impact maybe ever in the NFL. But it's just fascinating to me the career arc for Trey Lance, which might be closer to the end now at the age of 22, 23, whatever it is. Yeah.
So a lot of news and notes today. We got we just lined up a guest for tomorrow, by the way. A little tease. I just got feedback. We got a guest coming tomorrow, and you're gonna like him. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah.
Do we want to tell him?
Old friend of the show, Mike Sando.
We need to tell him because it's something I wanted to talk about tomorrow anyway. Is it the Sando QB tier?
Yep. I got a big text back. Let's do it! Exclamation mark. As we were on the air, but
the tier god, Mike Sando on The Athletic today dropped his yearly quarterback tiers, which are voted on by execs around the NFL. And it's always one of the better articles every offseason. And so we're going to talk about it with the man himself who talked to all these executives and coaches around the NFL. Mike Sando on tomorrow's Peacock and Williamson. Got some other guests lining up as well. And in fact, okay, look at us booking live on the show. How about
sure.
Aaron Schott, the inventor of the stat DVOA, friend of the program, is going to join us this week as well. So stay tuned for quarterback tier with Mike Sando, DVOA for the 2024 season with Aaron Schatz of FTN, and a whole lot more all season long. You're going to want to subscribe right here to Peacock and Williamson.